Welcome to the new episode of the Wellness Podcast. Today, the guest is Ashwar Anaya, who is a counselor psychologist. We talked a lot about attachment styles, relationships, modern relationships. If you are stuck in a situationship or an unsuccessful relationship that you think is not working out, this podcast is for you, where you can identify what are the attachment styles and what you have to work on and what you can communicate and how you can communicate to work on your relationships.
Hey Ashwara, how are you?
Hi, Shank. I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for being on this podcast.
Thank you so much for inviting me and being a part of this podcast. I really resonate with how depth the previous sessions have been in the podcast. So I'm really happy to be here and contribute.
Sure thing. Loved it. So, moving further, today we'll be talking about attachment styles. Right now, many relationships, especially the Gen Z relationships, are not lasting long because of multiple dating patterns and attachment
Mm.
styles. So, can you just give us a very shortest brief what exactly attachment style means?
Right. So when we look at attachment styles, it's often introduced as four different categories, right? So we have secure, anxious, avoidant. So we have four different types of attachment styles. But then, while these frameworks are really helpful, real life in real life rarely feels that clean and sorted and organized, right? So attachment styles are not personality type. It's not a label that you wear. It's the emotional blueprint that you develop around closeness. It could be safety or it could be a connection, right? So most of the time, we don't notice our attachment patterns when things are going well. So they show up when we feel very uncertain, when someone doesn't reply, or when there is a conflict, or when we are very scared of losing our closed ones. So a lot of times, instead of asking, what is my attachment style or pattern, I think it's more helpful if we can rephrase that question into something like what happens inside me when connection feels a little threatened. So, this is like a very brief explanation on how attachment works.
Right. So, right now, many people are facing with one term that is situationship. I'm saying facing because people are struggling.
Hmm.
It happens a lot of times when two people are in situationship and one gets kind of attached or
Mm.
got feelings, right? And one will be the one who will be getting the hurt, getting the like emotions that are negative, right? After the person didn't felt that much.
Understood.
So situationships, benching, ghosting, if you can talk a bit about these patterns
Mm.
and of course, like what are the attachment styles involved in these kind of relationships?
Definitely. So in today's world, attachment shows up in very small but intense moments, right? So usually the intense moments happens in our day-to-day relationships, especially romantic relationships. So, like for example, sending a text or watching the last scene every time they text, or overthinking the tone of a particular message that you get from a loved one, or feeling very unsettled when someone takes longer than the usual time that they used to respond. So all of this happens in the relationship, and we have a lot of terms like you were mentioning, situationship, benching, and there are multiple terms that we keep developing on the form and the patterns of the relationship and how it works. But ultimately, a lot of times, these relationships have most common attachment style, which is the anxious attachment style. So when we look at anxious attachment style, it might not look like needing reassurance, like checking in, wanting clarity, or feeling activated by someone's silence. Rather, these attachment styles, like anxious attachment style would come in different ways, which is rooted in the childhood, like all the childhood traumas or the parenting style or the environmental influences. So this can bring into the relationships in a form of anxiousness. So there is also another common style that we look at in the relationship aspect, which is called avoidant attachment style. This happens, and that is why a lot of relationships, go into situationship because they don't want to get into like a full-term commitment, or they don't want to go into a full-term exclusive relationship because the burden or the commitment or the responsibility can feel very heavy on them. So their pattern might be a very avoidant in a very avoidant way, that they would, even though they would want to be with that person, their attachment style wouldn't allow them to take up that responsibility or commitment for a longer run, because these are certain small changes that we need to do in terms of working towards to move into a secure attachment, right? These are not definitely very fixed, right? This is very flexible and we can work over it. And like as I mentioned, like moving towards a very secure attachment doesn't mean you don't feel these things. You will feel all these things. It just means that you can feel them without spiraling or disappearing on someone or just ghosting someone. You can try to communicate these feelings in a very healthier manner, or you choose communication, assertiveness, boundaries, rather than avoiding or coming across as very anxious or needy person, right? So it's not about who is texting first. It's about what happens in your nervous system while you're waiting for someone to text you, right? So that was like a brief on the relationship and how it can affect.
I love the last part of it when you stated that somebody is waiting and it doesn't matter actually that who is texting first. What matter is your nervous system if you are just waiting for someone's text. And
Absolutely.
that's literally defined ghosting as a relationship part, how another person used to feel, right?
Definitely.
So can you just give us a shortest brief on how mental health is impacted or well-being is impacted for someone who is facing these kind of things like situationship and ghosting,
Hmm.
who is on the another side, who's not doing ghosting, doing situation, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the person who is expecting
Hmm.
that it would work out. So yeah.
Right. So when we usually get into relationships, like especially if we are not on the same page, like if a person is not very committed or if they're not fully invested in the relationship, and if another person, would want to take it further, up until marriage or make it very exclusive, especially if they're not on the same page with everything that's going on or every decision that they take about the relationship, then it's going to really affect the person who is carrying on all the hope for the relationship, because that is gonna really impact their mental health to an extent where their self-worth, their self-esteem can be very very much compromised. They might think, okay, this person, whatever he's doing, because he doesn't like me, or I'm not worthy enough to be in this relationship, or I don't look in a certain way for him to take it further, or they can go into like a self-doubt spiraling aspect in case if they're not able to handle this well, right? So a lot of times, even in the cases, like even in my practice, a lot of cases come because they self blame, because they don't know how to handle uncertainty in a relationship. They always think like, okay, maybe I did something wrong that day, maybe I told them this, maybe that's what pulled him away, or maybe I did this particular, I mean, I did wear this cloth that day, which triggered him to break up with me. Or these are like instances where they actually, quoted all these sentences during, sessions, because a lot of times they start self blaming, they start questioning their identity, their self worth, the way they look. Even some to an extent, they also like question their economical background as well. So a lot of impact is around self and who they are as a person, their identity. So it takes a lot of inner work uh, for them to like come out of that. No, there is nothing wrong with you. You know, you're perfectly all right and you're perfectly fine. Just because this relationship doesn't work out, doesn't mean you're not worthy enough for that person. So so in terms of mental health impact, a lot of times it can be on self and our ability to trust another person. So there are also cases where they get into a lot of trust issues. They won't be able to trust another partner like the same way they did the previous one. In case if the relationship is ending very badly, they wouldn't be able to trust another person completely, or pull their guard down. They become very closed off.
Hmm.
So this can also impact their further relationships, and this can add on like a baggage, in case if they're getting into another relationship in the future, right? So a
Hmm.
lot of things revolve around how they perceive themselves and how they perceive another person. Uh, if things are not handled properly in a relationship.
Right. So if someone is moving ahead with a relationship that they are not good with or feeling safe and they end up getting married, what will be the impact in the family systems and what will be the impact on the child?
Right. So usually if they're not very compatible enough, especially like in a very emotional aspect, if the emotional compatibility is not there, and then they eventually end up getting married because of other factors, it would definitely come in terms of the way they communicate, right? One thing that I would probably want to bring in, especially if things go up until marriage and how it can impact a family, I have to talk about conflict, right? Attachment and how people handle conflicts. If attachment becomes like conflict is where the attachment becomes very, very visible. Like you will be able to see clearly how anyone's attachment style is formed, or how it is clearly in the way they handle conflicts. So some people escalate quickly, right? They want to talk now. They just want to fix it right now, resolve it right away. That urgency often comes from a fear of disconnection, right? In marriage, specifically in marriage, because after marriage, if you're not able to handle a conflict properly, appropriately, a lot of people want to fix it quickly because you're in a marriage and there is a lot of pressure, external pressure, family pressure, and for you to act in a certain way around your family members, right? So but a lot of times one partner can completely withdraw, right? They can go quiet, they need space, they don't want to
Right.
talk about it, or they emotionally completely shut down, right? And if that happens during a relationship itself, it's very difficult to handle. And when that's happening in a marriage, when family is involved, it can be even more difficult for the people involved to handle it. So this often makes both the parties feel very overwhelmed. So on the surface, it looks like one person is very dramatic and the other one is very cold, and they're very shut off. But underneath, both are trying to feel safe, right? There is nothing wrong in the way both of them are reacting. It's just a nervous system trying to feel, okay, this is how they used to feel safe. One used to feel safe by expressing emotions, resolving it, talking it then and there. But the other person is used to feeling safe by withdrawing, right?
Hmm.
Taking their own time. So that is just the difference in the way the attachment is formed, right? So when we look at if a person is saying please don't leave me and the other person is like please don't overwhelm me,
Right.
so that clearly shows the it's just the understanding that softens a lot of judgment around couples, especially around marriage and conflict when a family is involved. So a lot of times family would not be able to understand a lot of it.
Hmm.
They would struggle a lot of times. They would also even come across like, okay, one day they're okay and the other day they're quarreling, and how does this happen? So and a lot of times they also try to intervene and make things a little difficult for the couples as well. So how the family affects is generally how they try to understand each couple, and how they can support them individually according to their own safety needs, right? So that's how the only way attachment styles or the patterns can be changed to a more secure way.
Understood.
I
So,
hope that answers.
right, that clearly indicates how family systems, relationships, and you can say child and whatever the family members are involved will get affected. So, if we talk about that further, right? So, let's now talk about consciousness and conscious decisions plus coping mechanism and attachment styles of men and women differently.
Mm,
So, for example, my observation is men used to feel safe with their partner.
mm,
And for example, a man can be the founder of a unicorn company or can be a chief staff of some MNC, and they have a total different personality. But when they come home, they are very neutral, they don't have any mask, they are not exactly what they were outside the home. They have their real self in front of their partner. But when any kind of disagreement happens,
mm,
multiple men used to shut themselves and
mm,
used to just observe and don't respond at all. So in multiple movies as well, we saw
mm.
that men are taking their time. They are just quiet. They are not responding to anything of the partner. They
Yes.
are just observing things. They are just processing things. That's their conscious behavior and a coping mechanism. What I personally felt. Is it right? Is it wrong? Is it frequent? Or can you please just put a light on it?
Right. So this is something that's eventually, like in the recent time, this has been coming to surface. Like people are starting to talk about men's mental health and how they express things. We used to not give the appropriate limelight to men's mental health. It's been a while that has happened, but then recent times, people are aware of how important is for a man to not always man up, right? Rather, start being vulnerable and start expressing emotions, and so the way you mentioned, like in a lot of movies, they've shown or depicted a male character being always shut down or taking time to talk about things, or processing in their own way. It's majorly because how our culture and our society has shaped men to express their emotions, because a lot
Hmm.
of times when they're growing up, they were shamed for crying, or they were always guilt tripped for showing emotions. Like you're a man, you're a boy, you need to act a certain way. You can't cry like a woman, right? So there has been a lot of stigma around men showing emotions. So and gladly things are changing in the recent times, but there are still certain areas where men are not aware that it's okay to for me to be vulnerable. It's okay for me to show my emotions. It's okay for me to break down and cry, or it's okay for me to be talk whatever I want to talk or express my feelings just the way it is, rather covering it up. So, it is important for us to bring or encourage men in terms of communicating their emotions or expressing things if they want to, right? And they shouldn't be conditioned to suppress emotions, or, act in a way that most of the times they look or appear to be very cold, right? So, and men are always like this, should keep changing, right? Because obviously they're not that way. And there are, men who genuinely wants to take some time and process and then talk, and that is also completely fine. There is no
Hmm.
right or way wrong, you know in terms of the attachment styles. It's just that it is really healthy for us or not, how this is beneficial for our nervous system. Is this helping me, like shutting myself down, taking my own time to respond? Is it helping me, or is it putting me in an even more pedestal or pressure to talk the right thing, right? So it's completely up to us and how it is acting up on our nervous system overall, right? So that is something that we'll have to focus on um, rather to see if men are able to communicate or not, right? So but then I think in the recent time, a lot of people are very vocal about this, which
Hmm.
is eventually going to bring a lot of change in how men specifically perceive emotions or express emotions.
Right. And what do you say about females' response? How female used to make a conscious decision
Hmm.
as a coping mechanism, as well as what are their frequent attachment styles in relationships?
Hmm. So generally, when we look at little bit of stats or just the pattern in which I've seen clients, women are not very conscious in terms of making decisions, especially when they're very emotional, right? A lot of, especially if they're not able to regulate their emotions appropriately, they tend to, express their emotion right on the face or very straightforward in terms of
Hmm.
showing off their emotions. They never shy away from crying or they never shy away from showing the emotions exactly as it is, like the predominant of the population, like women population. But there are also, there are also people like exceptions, like people who take their own time, people who like respond rather than reacting with all the heavy emotions right then and there. But they do take conscious decisions once they've calmed down, like once they've processed it properly, or once they've taken time to talk about it to someone, while they're processing it. So usually, once they learn how to regulate their emotions better, the decision making skills also becomes much better, right? But there is quite a bit of a population who reacts quickly rather than responding or taking time to respond. And this is
Right.
a pattern that I've seen.
Yeah. So, if you look at the patterns,
Hmm.
right? So let's focus on patterns of ghosting, for example. So if my partner is ghosting on me, how to communicate it, how to realize the another partner who is ghosting,
Hmm.
how to realize the partner that he is ghosting and he's not doing right, how to confess it, and what exactly both can do to make it work out.
Right. So when someone pulls away, right? So we often interpret it as lack of interest, and sometimes it is, but sometimes it's fear of vulnerability, right? They don't want to be, very close. They don't like that vulnerability. That doesn't seem very familiar to them. It feels very threatening for them to be that vulnerable with a person. So they're not able to communicate. Rather, they ghost. Sometimes this closeness feel extremely unfamiliar, and sometimes someone cares for you, or but that doesn't yet have the emotional capacity to stay present in the intimacy, right? A lot of times they don't have the emotional capacity and then they start ghosting, right? So avoidance, it's not always indifference. Sometimes it's protection. They're trying to protect themselves there, right? So that doesn't mean we excuse any unhealthy behavior, uh, but understanding why helps us to communicate it better, or respond with clarity instead of self blaming us. So I think it will be really helpful for women to understand why they are doing it. They're
Hmm.
trying to ask them or talk about it, like in case if they feel like, okay, they are not communicating enough, or they're not responding to messages, or they're trying to ghost you, or they're not responding to as much as they used to do. Definitely confronting it, being a little assertive and polite, and then bringing up in conversations and telling them, hey, this is not something that I really appreciate. I think it'll be better for us to, talk about this rather like just ghosting and, completely going off on me. I don't think that is something that's making me feel good about this relationship. I think establishing boundaries via communication is the first step. Confronting, not blaming them, rather using a lot of I statements. Like when we are trying to confront, for us to politely confront or communicate these things, because these are very sensitive things, right? We can't go ahead and then blame that person on the behavior. Rather, using a lot of I statements and telling them, hey, you're doing certain things which is making me feel a certain way, right? Not because I'm feeling this way. You can try to mention saying that I feel certain way because of this particular behavior, not because of you. Rather, it's because of this particular behavior that you're executing, right? So I am feeling certain way. So using a lot of I statements in the beginning will help the other person to not feel like, okay, she's blaming me, she's pinpointing the mistakes on my end. Rather, it would sound like, okay, she's expressing what she's been feeling. Right.
Mhm.
And maybe it's not because of me, but the way I behave sometimes. Right. So it'll help the other person to sort of empathize when we are starting to use a lot of I statements. And apart from that, also trying to be assertive, right? Not encouraging or not letting go of these things constantly, right? It's okay,
Right.
not like for example, if this is repeatedly happening in a relationship and then adjusting and then being in the relationship just because the fear of losing that person is not very healthy again. Like communicating boundaries, and if that is not seen in actions, or if the other person is not able to work on that or improve or show any reasonable improvement in the actions, then I think it's high time that they have to realize that this is not something that we have to keep entertaining, right? So that boundary and where to stop and then where to keep trying in the relationship is something that's very essential for anyone, be it women or men, for them to know, to take it a little healthier moving on.
So you talked about relationships, and in multiple relationships, we analyze that whenever any disagreement or fights are happening,
Hmm,
it is stretching, you can say, for a long period of time.
hmm,
Many partners,
hmm,
especially after two partners, one partner will be like, hey, let's solve this. We are not going to sleep before solving this, before
hmm,
communicating. We need to find a resolution. We need to come on the same page.
hmm,
We need to solve this at any cost.
hmm,
Be awake and solve this. And one partner, the other partner will be like, let's do it tomorrow. Let's do it after a week. Let's do it on weekend. I don't have time. I'm just going to sleep. Neend aa rahi hai. So, what do you want to communicate to them? Plus, what are the attachment styles that they are following that they didn't even know?
hmm. Right. So this is something that I think I brought it up a little earlier. So this is where a person wants to fix it
Hmm.
instantly, right? They just wanted to get the resolution then and there. They don't care about how
Hmm.
tired the other person is. They don't
Hmm.
think about if the other person has the mental or emotional clarity or the space to talk about it at that point. They just want the resolution. So this is one of a classic example of anxious attachment style. So they constantly need that reassurance. They need to know that everything is fine with them. They need to know that the relationship is manageable, survivable. The relationship will not die. The person still loves the other person with the same intensity, right? So these are all certain things. So they want to take the control over the relationship and how it is feeling, because they're not able to sit with the uncomfortable feeling of a conflict. They're not able to sit with that uncomfortable feeling throughout the night of the indifference or the argument, right? So they want instant gratification by talking and resolving it. And the only way or the only control they have in that particular situation is initiating a conversation or initiating a conversation with the partner. That is the only way they can control. Right. But end of the day, it is important for them to also understand, no matter how much you try to initiate a conversation, if the other person is not in an appropriate mindset to listen, or if they don't have the mental capacity to comprehend things, it's not going to work out, because that is going to make things even worse, because they might be talking something the other person would understand it in a different way, and the conflict can even become a little higher. So and this is coming from a perspective of how instant gratification of solving it quickly will not always work. And when we look at the other person's reaction to constantly avoid talking, right? Constantly escape from having the problem confrontation, escaping from that, or trying to avoid that emotional conversation or deep conversation with the partner is a very classic example of the other side, which is the avoidant attachment style. So, as I've already mentioned, so this is a place where uh, you know, either they're not interested, one, or it could also be coming from a place of, okay, I don't know how to deal with my emotions when she is bringing up certain things. I don't know how to articulate my emotions in a very polite manner. If I talk about it, it could come across as very rude, or I can be very straightforward by hurting the other person. So rather to do that, I would probably avoid this whole thing, right? Until she forgets. It's not always that the person doesn't like you or they don't have the interest towards you. It's just that they don't have the emotional vocabulary to communicate their feelings or their emotions, or
Right.
the vulnerability in an appropriate manner, right? So that's why a lot of people would want to escape from that conversation. And if this is not taken well by the partner, they can instantly go into a spiral thinking, okay, he doesn't like me, he doesn't have the interest in talking to me, or he doesn't have the urge to fix the relationship like I do, right? I am taking
Right.
all the essential steps to fix the relationship and be the man in the relationship, but the
Oh.
other person is not willing to do that. So it goes into a spiral of thoughts.
Right, and in this spiral of thoughts, multiple relationships are getting damaged and they didn't even realize this.
Yeah,
So,
true.
can attachment styles change over time? And can anybody who is self-aware and knows about
Mm,
his or her self
mm.
and know what kind of attachment styles he or she is following, can somebody change their attachment styles with time period?
Definitely. So this is one of the most important parts I was looking towards this conversation, because I really wanted to clear a lot of misconceptions about the attachment theory, because a lot of people tend to think, okay, this is a fault in my side, or I'm having a very bad attachment style, or it's a personality flaw, or it's a personality trait, or they get into a lot of spiral thinking, okay, I shouldn't be this way, but I'm still that way. No, I really wanted to clear all these misconceptions, saying that this is any attachment style is not a diagnosis. It's not a personality flaw. It's very flexible. Every attachment style is okay to have, right? There is nothing wrong in the way that you've uh, build these patterns to protect yourself. There is nothing wrong in having any different attachment style. It's okay. But uh, how much we are able to be self-aware of it and move towards a very secure attachment pattern is all that matters, right? And they need not worry or guilt trip themselves saying that, okay, I am acting this way. I think maybe I lie under the anxious attachment style. Maybe there is something very heavily wrong with me. No, there is nothing as such. That it's just that the way they've developed these patterns is because how they were shown love when they were a child. It's all deeply rooted in the childhood, and how they were parented, or how they were
Hmm.
influenced by the environmental while they were growing up, the societal pressure or the parenting. It involves a lot of factors on how these attachment patterns or styles are formed, right? and they have only formed these attachment styles in different ways to protect themselves. Nothing wrong in being any of this category. The only way to go forward with this attachments theory is to see how these patterns are very adaptive, they're very, very flexible. They are formed for a reason. Often they help us to survive emotionally in our previous environments. So these were the patterns that helped particular person to survive in our environment. Probably avoiding is something that's always worked out for them in the future, I mean, in the past. Like, for example, every time they avoid, they're able to save their energy, or they're not getting into unnecessary drama. So maybe in a previous earlier environment, these patterns would have been very beneficial for them. So they keep doing that to protect themselves, thinking, okay, this is the only way to deal with the situation. Just trying to understand that, okay, maybe there are different ways to deal with a situation. Maybe we should explore and be open to adapting is the only way, right? So if these are not permanent, and the security or the secure attachment can be built through a lot of self-awareness, right? That is the base root of moving into a very secure attachment style. The third, something that I would say is being consistent, and being try to explore these things in a very safe relationship or an environment, trying to change these patterns in a very safe space, right? And definitely therapy can also really help. Meeting a professional, psychologist would also help them. First of all, help them understand, okay, these are the things that I've been doing in a different way. Maybe these are a little challenging for me. Maybe I do have other ways to perceive a situation or a problem. So therapy can also induce a lot of self-awareness, which can also act as a catalyst for them to be adaptive, to shift to the secure attachment style. Right. So you can move towards security. It's not about becoming perfect. It's about becoming more aware and less reactive. Right. So that's what we are aiming at.
Understandable, understandable. So, if we go ahead with this,
Hmm.
what exactly people can do
Hmm.
to recognize their patterns that are impacting relationships? First, they can go to therapy for sure.
Hmm.
Second, what exactly self thing that they can do to recognize their patterns? It can be journal or whatever you prefer. What exactly people can do themselves?
Right. So for us to actually figure out, okay, maybe it could be an attachment style, or it could be a very challenging pattern, or very unhealthy behavior in that particular situation. The first thing is to see how, how does that make me feel? One, am I feeling better by reacting this way? Am I feeling, even more worse by reacting this way, right? Is it really helping the relationship? Are we coming together as a couple, or are we, strengthening the relationship by reacting in this certain way? Is it, hurting the other person, or is it, is it helping me? Am I okay reacting in such a, in such a way in that particular situation? So a lot of self-reflection, definitely journaling would also help, like trying to, process or reflect on what went wrong in an argument, or just sitting with your thoughts and asking yourself, okay, why did that I reacted that particular day? Why did I choose my words very harshly? Right? A little bit of self-reflection and putting it down in a paper will give you a lot of clarity in identifying these patterns. Because for us to understand these are patterns and we need to work on it, first we'll have to know there is a problem with the pattern, right?
Right.
They need to know that, okay, this is not working out in the relationship. I can't
Hmm.
keep avoiding, or I can't keep reacting this way. It's not becoming healthy, the relationship, or it's not benefiting both of us,
Right.
right? Either me or the partner should work on something, or the way we perceive, the way we communicate, the way we articulate our emotions, there is somewhere we are stuck. We're not able to be on the same page. So only when they're able to reflect, and if they're open to working on the
Hmm.
mistakes, they'll be able to
Mhm.
identify these patterns over the time.
Right. So self-awareness is very important in this.
Self-awareness. So journaling can be very helpful, and the second thing that they can start doing is, um, as I mentioned earlier, self-regulation. So the one of the most widely used self-regulation technique is taking a pause. Like the moment they know they're going to react, they're going to shout, or they're going to scream at the other person, or they're going to be indulging in any faulty
Hmm.
coping mechanism, just pausing and then taking few deep breaths, just trying to ask themselves, okay, I think I'm gonna react, I think I'm gonna do something which is not me, I think I'm gonna show my anger in a very challenging way, maybe I think I need to step out. So at that point it's very hard to think logically, the emotions would take over, right? You won't be able to logically think or stop there. Your emotions will control your brain. So we have to slowly change that in a way where you are trying to control the emotion rather emotion taking it over, right? So the best way to do it,
Hmm.
taking a pause, taking few deep breaths and drinking some water, right? Moving away from that situation, excusing themselves, like telling them, hey, excuse me, I think
Right.
I need few minutes, right? I need a breather. Probably I need to go use a restroom. I'll just be back in a few minutes. And then moving away, stepping away from that heated argument or whatever is, making them little uncertain or threatened in that situation, moving away from there and trying to regulate the emotions. In case if the emotions are 12 out of 10 at that point, you can't expect that person to be talking politely or in a very socially political manner. They can't able to function that way, right? They're going to be very rude, or they're going to react, they're going to say things which they might regret later. So for the our goal should be focused on making the 12 out of 10 anger to 6 out of 10, or maybe 5 out of 10, and then talk,
Hmm.
right? So reducing the intensity of the anger and then reacting will help us a lot, will change a lot of things in the way we communicate, right? So that can also be very beneficial when we are trying to start regulating in the for beginners.
So moving towards the end of the podcast,
Hmm.
can you just give us the biggest myth about the
Hmm.
attachment style?
Right. So something that I get a lot is, I think the biggest misunderstanding of what I've heard very commonly is that insecure attachment means something is wrong with me. There is something that is very wrong with me, that I don't think I am even meant to be in any relationship. I don't think I can handle anyone being close to me. I don't think I am built for marriage or relationships. This is something that I've commonly heard. um, Common misunderstandings when they know that their attachment is very insecure, right? So it doesn't, all these are completely misunderstandings. It means that you learned to cope in a certain way, in a certain situation, under certain guidance, under certain parenting skills, under certain environmental aspects, you learn to cope in a different way, in a certain way, right? And that coping may not be beneficial in all the environmental or situational aspects. That coping might not be beneficial for all the relationships that you're having, right? So attachment isn't about blaming, right? Not of parents, not of your partner, not even for yourself, right? It's about recognizing the pattern with a lot of self compassion, because the only way out from these misunderstandings or misconceptions is to give that self compassion to you towards yourself, uh, to constantly reassure you, saying that okay, attachment style isn't anyone's flaw, right? It's just history trying to protect you. It's just your way that you've been born and brought up, trying to protect you, right? So that is something that I really would like to highlight. There is nothing wrong with being in
Mhm.
any form of attachment style.
Right. So there is nothing wrong with yourself. It's just your
Yep,
patterns and styles. You can change
exactly.
it with time.
True, true. So at the end of the day, attachment shapes how we love, how we
Hmm.
show love, how we argue, right? How we seek reassurance and we pull away. But awareness gives us choice to do it in a certain way or not, right? And
Hmm.
choice is exactly where the healing begins. So it's important for us to focus on what we are choosing, right?
Agree.
Yeah.
So thanks a lot, Aishwarya. It was a lovely
Thank you.
podcast, and I believe many people who are in relationships or trying to be in a relationship will get what attachment style means, and they can be more self-aware about their attachment styles after this podcast.
Right. Thank you so much for asking me really beautiful questions, which is very essential for us to discuss and have a healthy conversation on this topic. And very big thanks again for this invite and giving me this opportunity to discuss this.
Sure, thanks a lot.